Hi guys, welcome back. Another security stories for you. I've had a few women in the comments talking about, well, it's always the men that are committing the acts of violence. So I thought maybe it's time to do security stories that's a female specific edition. Women and violence we're going to be looking at, because I've had plenty of experience of that in various different types. It doesn't always follow the same patterns as male violence, but it's violence nonetheless, and they're certainly not innocent in all of this. Although women are statistically less likely to involve themselves in acts of actual violence, we can hear by some of these experiences that they are far from innocent in the whole picture. And for those that are saying, oh, you're picking on women, or I've had people saying I was picking on the gay community in the video I made about the experiences I had there. All these videos are just about my experiences and the stories that I've got to tell from those. They're broken up into categories to make it easier to put them into a video. I'm not just going to make a video on random stories. They have to fall into a certain category. But if you look across all my security videos, I'm not picking on people. Everyone gets a kind of bit of critique, even myself in some of them. So no one's free from criticism there. Now, when I worked, a vast amount of the violent incidents were normally centered around passions running high and relationships of some kind or another. And the story was usually along the lines of boy and girl come into the club, they're dating. Girls wearing some, appealing clothing, as girls do when they go out. So she's looking pretty hot, she's trying to impress, and she's going to go on the dance floor and kind of dance away. A bunch of guys are going to dance with her. She's going to absolutely love it. She's then going to stare over at her boyfriend and kind of try and make him a little bit jealous. This then involves the boyfriend getting angry, bearing in mind that a lot of the time, these girls would be sort of grinding all over these dudes on the dance floor, and they knew exactly what they were doing. I used to stand back and watch all this happening, and the girls kind of playing innocent when the boyfriend comes over. Hey, I'm just dancing, it's no big deal. Why are you getting so angry? But she clearly wanted that reaction. She wanted that attention from the guys on the dance floor. And then, of course, it all kicks off. The boyfriend isn't going to take it out on her. He's going to take his anger out on these dudes. They're going to now be stuck in a situation where they have to show that they're kind of the big guys. They can't be seen to back down, especially not in front of a girl that they're trying to impress. So you now got this sort of clash of testosterone, these young males all butting heads together, and the girl standing in the middle kind of saying, oh, heavens above, what could have happened here? She knows exactly what happened there. And usually that would get really out of hand. Someone would get seriously hurt. She would then start screaming and shouting like she's the victim in the whole thing, and be probably the loudest screamer in the whole situation, although no one had even touched her at this point. That was generally how it went. So there has to be an element of responsibility there, for girls to say, oh, we don't commit any violence, but actually if you looked at it, statistically speaking, quite a lot of violence is done kind of at the behest of the girl. Like, I used to see that happen so often, it was just untrue. And there must be an element of responsibility on the girl's part there, that if she's going to play that game, that the guy's obviously going to be upset. And when guys are young and full of testosterone, it's pretty easy to predict the results of what's going to happen. The same thing would be, girls at a bar. If I'm dating a girl and she goes up to the bar and some dude offers to buy her a drink that isn't known to her, it's not a friend or it's not a mate's boyfriend or something like that, it's a stranger, he's offering to buy her a drink. If she accepts that drink and then stands there chatting with him, yeah, she may have just wanted a free drink, but she has to use her brain a little bit here. She's just seriously disrespected her boyfriend, because she's basically giving this guy the kind of come on at the bar, giving him a bit of a green light to chat her up further when she's in a relationship. So I used to see that happen a ton as well. And I wouldn't be pissed off now. You know, I'm too old to be pissed off about that kind of thing. I would just be like, okay, you're not the girl for me, and I would move on and find someone else to be with. But when you're young and you're insecure, you know, you put a lot of hope in the relationship you're in. You probably don't have the confidence to walk out of your relationship and into a brand new one as a young guy. So they would kind of go all out trying to keep these girls. And of course, the girl probably did want to flirt with another guy. She liked the attention. She was seeing what her chances were elsewhere. And also, she probably wanted a free drink. So, you know, there's that. It's always nice to get some free stuff and a bit of attention thrown in. But that used to lead to endless problems as well. And again, the girl in that situation has to take some responsibility, because what could she have said? She could have said, no, actually, there's my boyfriend over there. I don't want a drink. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And there was lots and lots of girls that did that. You know, great girls. They would go sit back down with their boyfriend. It wasn't those people that got into fights, believe me. It was the people that were kind of playing games with each other. 1 minute they're on, the next minute they're off. And then they would be kind of trying to make their partner jealous. So I saw an absolute ton of that. Now, one level on from that was situations where the girls would get so jealous and so angry with each other in terms of relationship stuff that this actually led to physical violence. So I certainly saw a fair share of that. A couple of the really bad ones I actually saw a girl get very annoyed because a guy had come over and asked her friend out, and I think her friend was going out with someone else. This girl in question was very upset that the guy had asked this other girl out because she thought it was disrespectful, and she ended up taking her stiletto off. She walked over and just clubbed this guy straight in the face with her stiletto. Unfortunately, the heel actually went straight into his eye, and it kind of went below his eyeball, but it did damage his eye quite badly. It didn't blind him, but you know, pretty bad injury, blood everywhere, made a real mess of him. And she really didn't think she had done anything wrong. The police turned up, arrested her, and she was like, oh, why are you arresting me? You know, I'm a girl, I just hit him with my stiletto, he deserved it, why is he being such a pussy? But I mean, he had a hole in his face which was literally spurting blood out of it, so he definitely wasn't being pussy, as she put it. You know, that was a serious injury, and that was kind of interesting to see the reaction of someone that had committed. If a man had done that, you know, everyone would be saying, oh my God, you know, it's a really horrible, violent act. But even the onlookers were like, oh, she only hit him with a shoe. Yeah, you know, she only hit him with a shoe. I used to see quite a lot of that kind of behaviour when girls attacked guys. I saw a lot of domestic violence kind of behaviour, I guess you would call it, with very assertive girls that were in relationships with guys that were a little bit submissive, you know, not very confident with themselves, and they would generally have too much to drink. Often the girl would have too much to drink. The submissive guy would be the sort of named driver or whatever. And once the girl had had too much to drink, she would get angry, suggest that he had looked at someone in the wrong way, and then begin kind of whacking him around. Everyone thought this was really funny because it wasn't like she wasn't breaking his nose or anything like that, but certainly hitting him with enough ferocity to be considered abuse. You know, it wasn't messing around. She meant it. And I used to see that more often than I care to mention, and these poor guys would just kind of sit there and take it. People would laugh about it. Even the guy's friends sometimes would laugh about it because they just didn't take that seriously at all. I used to take it pretty seriously because I'd actually been in a relationship where that happened. In the first relationship I was ever in, the person had some significant alcohol problems. It turned out, you know, quite a way into the relationship I found that out. And they started having sort of episodes. When they had these episodes, like blackout episodes, they would get incredibly violent with me. And unbeknownst to me, you know, sometimes I could walk in the house after a shift at work or whatever and just get randomly attacked. It would be pitch black in the house, and then I walk through the door and suddenly I get like a iron bar across the face or whatever. And guys again used to laugh at me back in the day. I would come to work and I'd have like a big bruise across my face, and they would say, oh, who have you been fighting, you know, because I was doing security work. And I'd be like, actually, you know, my missus did that when I walked in last night. The problem I had was she was a very nice person when she wasn't behaving like that. So it was a real roller coaster ride, you know, and I felt kind of sorry for her. I wanted to help her because I thought she had some real issues, you know, she had some issues in her past that I felt really bad for her about. And I thought, you know, if I can be a rock to you and a help to you, I would be. But unfortunately, I was never able to kind of get her out of that way of thinking. You know, she could never move past it. But I had suffered like that for, you know, a couple of years at least. And everyone kind of laughed, and I kind of laughed in a way. In another way, it was pretty hurtful and very, very unpleasant. And I'm not like on a rally, I'm not petitioning for some sort of sympathy, or I'm not some sort of flag bearer for male victims or whatever, but it happens and it's not a nice thing, you know, and to laugh about it and kind of dismiss it as nothing is incorrect. It has an effect on me. I was quite a tough, stoic guy. I could kind of deal with it. For other young men, it's probably not something that they're dealing with easily, and it's probably making their life an absolute misery. Now, I discussed in another video the situation where I was in an R&B club, and again we had two girls arguing, this time about, I think one was going out with a guy, another had been seeing the guy behind the girl's back, so they've both been seeing this guy separately, and then they come to blows. One of them hits the other with a champagne bottle, it breaks and basically removes part of her cheek. She ended up getting dragged off by the police. So no one should imagine that women are not capable of doing some pretty extreme acts of violence to each other or to men. You know, that's as we've just discussed, that can happen. But yeah, more than capable of being violent to one another. I've dealt with loads and loads of fights with girls where they have literally ripped each other's hair to pieces. I mean, like massive chunks of hair with like bloody pieces of scalp attached to them. So again, that's something that people laugh about, going, oh, it was a cat fight, they were like grabbing each other's hair. But when they're ripping each other's scalps to pieces and they're coming away and they've literally got cuts down their faces where they're trying to claw each other's eyes out, you know, that's no joke. I've been involved in breaking those things up and come away covered in scratches as well. In another of my videos about the strip clubs, I actually broke up a fight there and got in a lot of trouble with my girlfriend at the time because she accused me, because I was covered in perfume, makeup, scratches all over me, and I got accused of being in some sort of orgy for that. But that was a real problem in clubs, you know, trying to separate girls that had attacked each other was incredibly difficult. It was like prizing apart two fighting cats. Very, very hard indeed, and very, very unpleasant, because with guys I could use like a certain level of pain compliance. I also think with guys that if guys are intimidated by another guy, that's leverage for me, right? There could be two smaller guys arguing and shouting around, and I go and break them up just by telling them both, shut the fuck up, pack it in, and they kind of look round at me and think, yeah, we're going to do what this guy's telling us. If I do that with women, zero happens. You know, if I say to two women, hey, you two, pack it in, they just look at me like I'm from planet Mars and carry on having their argument. I may as well not have even spoken. And it's not till afterwards, there's been times where I've actually sort of picked them up and dragged them off, and then they act all surprised and victimised. Suddenly they realise I actually exist and I do have some level of input into that situation. I remember one girl went into a club at the end of the pier. This was when I worked down on the south coast. I've told some stories about this pier before as well. And she actually went up to a girl that she didn't like, punched her in the face for no apparent reason, just because she didn't like her. And then she grabbed this girl's bag and threw it over the side of the pier. So I hadn't seen any of that happening, but the girl and her friends come up to me. They're all, you know, upset. The girl's crying her eyes out. She's clearly been hit. And she says to me, you know, this woman over there has grabbed my bag. She's thrown it over the side, and in that it was my keys, my like house keys and everything, my credit cards, my ID, everything's in there. My whole life's in there, my mobile phone. So she was absolutely in bits, you know, she had no money to get home, etc. So we made sure she was all right. We helped her out. We called a couple of people for her. They came and picked her up. But I had to go and deal with the girl that had done it. The girl that had done it, I knew she was from a really horrible family of like crack dealing scumbags that used to live down in that area. The father of the family, you know, thought himself to be a notorious drug dealer. He was just a bully boy, scumbag basically. And then there was 2 daughters, both of them awful, both of them drug addicts, but would go around intimidating and bullying people for money. Just really, really unpleasant. And then a son who was actually serving time because I believe he murdered his teacher with an ashtray, if I remember rightly. So what a lovely guy he was. And so I got up to this girl and I said, you know, what the hell's going on? And she said, you know, fuck that girl. I hate her, didn't like her. And I said, why didn't you like her? No, I just don't like the way she looks. So she had 0 reason. You know, I always wanted to know why people had done this kind of stuff in the first place, because if they've got some real mitigating circumstance, it's going to affect the way I deal with the situation. But in this situation, there was no mitigating circumstance. This girl was just horrid. And she spat in my face actually as I was talking to her, because I said to her, I can't believe you would treat another person like that. You know, you've thrown her whole life basically into the sea and hit her for no apparent reason. And I said, you know, I'm going to have to escort you off the premises. And, you know, she said, you're not going to touch me, basically. My dad's ex-name, he's this big drug dealer. You know, if you touch me, he's going to kill you. And I said, oh, I actually know your dad. You know, I've come across him before. So please give him my regards. And I said, now I'm going to take you out. And she said, you're not going to take me anywhere. And then she started to attack me. So I actually grabbed her by the ponytail and just dragged her back down the pier, probably about a 1/4 mile walk, and she refused to get up. So I literally dragged her for the whole way, and she was screaming abuse, you know, saying I was abusing her and victimizing her, etc. But she refused to walk. She had spat at me, she had physically tried to assault me, and she had just assaulted someone else as well. So we got her down to the end of the pier, and I'd already made a radio call. So when she got down the end there, they just held on to her and passed her over to the police, who were investigating on behalf of this young girl that had been assaulted and had all her stuff thrown over the side. So yeah, an incredibly unpleasant female. I later also had some dealings with her sister, who then assaulted someone I knew as well, and was also equally as unpleasant. And the whole family were just an absolute disgrace. And you got families like that sometimes where there was just unpleasantness running through the whole lot of them. You know, they were all into the same deal, they were all kind of into the drug dealing, the lifestyle and whatever, and they were all capable of violence. We saw that fairly often, that you would get entire families that were just happy to commit violence and commit criminality. The last thing I would note about the women and violence situation was I worked with a lot of women who were capable of violence as security staff, but interestingly enough, they were very keen to talk about, you know, girl power, women power, all this kind of feminism type talk. But actually they tended to depend quite a lot on the exact opposite, and that often backfired on them. So a lot of the girls I worked with were kind of anti-men in a way, and I think part of the work was like to prove, hey, I'm better than a man kind of thing, which was fine. I don't care what people want to do, you know, as long as they were competent doing the job. Unfortunately, some of these girls weren't competent at doing the job. I would also mention some of the guys I worked with weren't competent at doing the job, so that was not unusual or gender specific. But the girls made a real big deal out of this I'm better than a guy type deal. And when it came down to the physicality side, most of the time the girl would rely on the fact that guys weren't going to hit them. Of course, that only works 95% of the time, because there's an element of guys out there that have really bought into feminism. They've bought into it so much they believe in 100% equality across the board, including equality in violence. So when these girls would try this kind of talking to the guy like crap, grabbing hold of him, you know, ragging him about, funny enough, the guy would then respond by just punching her straight in the face. We would all step in at that point and stop the situation and get rid of the guy, and maybe he would be arrested or whatever. But I can't lie, you know, there was a part of me that kind of says, yeah, you got exactly what you signed up for there. You know, you thought you could rely on something that is actually what you're completely against. You're relying on these guys acting like they would be courteous to women and give women like a special consideration, a bit like the old-fashioned kind of 1940s 1950s type of atmosphere, which feminists normally say that they absolutely hate. And when they got attacked, obviously they're screaming, you know, the guy is out of order for hitting a woman. But they've got what they wanted, right? It's complete equality. If you want equality in absolutely everything, you're going to get equality in absolutely everything. Personally, I don't think there should be equality in everything. You know, I like some of the old-fashioned values. Not all. I think that there should be a level playing field in terms of competence, that men and women should both be able to go for whatever job they want, and whoever is the most competent should get the job. But there shouldn't be any kind of block as to which jobs they go for. And exactly the same with whatever they do. You know, if you want to do a sport and you're a man or a woman, you go and do that sport to the best of your ability. There should be no stigma attached to that, and both should have an equal try at doing it and competing for it. I've got no issues with any of that. I'm totally for it. So I'm for all that side of equality. Equality in the workplace, you know, employ the most competent person. I don't care if they're male or female. I don't care what sexuality they are, all that other stuff. I just want the most competent person for the job. But where I kind of stop on the whole equality issue is, like we've just spoken about, equality of violence, for example. I think there are some things that you don't want served across the board. I'm quite happy to think back to a time where, you know, it was a very, very rare thing where men would attack a female. Now we live in a time where if you're a female police officer, for example, you're almost just as likely to get attacked as a male police officer. I mean, if you go back 20, 30 years, that wouldn't have been the case, because there was this kind of courteous side to males, even if they weren't the most pleasant guys. And there was a societal stigma attached to that, that even if you were a criminal, if you had gone and sort of bashed up a woman, your other criminal associates wouldn't be impressed at all. Now things have changed a little bit, and a lot of the younger criminals, they don't care if they're bashing a woman, a man, an old person, whatever, they'll just bash anyone. So that's all turned on its head, which is something I don't particularly like. Now, the last thing I'd mention in terms of violence was, you know, not all violence is physical, and that's generally where women excelled. I lost track of the amount of arguments and upset that I dealt with, you know, because the largest volume of stuff that door people deal with is people that are upset. You know, they come and see you at the door, they're in absolute pieces, and they're saying, oh my God, you know, my friends have all turned on me, this person said this to me, I just found out that my friend has been doing this behind my back, all that kind of stuff. It was like the Jerry Springer show. You know, you'd have all these wide range of emotions, generally quite extreme ones, and they would be asking you to somehow help them. They were just drunk generally and desperate, and they wanted someone to talk to, and you were the kind of sober person that they could find on the door and tell all their problems to. It never ceased to amaze me that you know, the amount of horrific stuff that girls would do to one another when it came to just friendship groups. And this sometimes wasn't even involving guys or relationships or anything. It was just girls with each other, and they would be really, really vile to one another for no apparent reason. And I didn't often see that with men. With young men, what I would see was a lot of kind of testosterone, like young bulls clashing generally over girls, or over like the peacocking towards girls, so they would be trying to show off in physical ways. That would get out of hand, and then they would start bashing each other. And generally speaking, those two guys, in most incidents, you would see them a couple of weeks later and they would kind of be getting on. So it wasn't like a long-term situation. With the girls, man, it was a long-term situation. You know, once a girl had kind of decided she didn't like the other girl for whatever reason, whatever bizarre reason that was, it was on. And that was like a long-term campaign of kind of backstabbing, slagging off, reputation, savaging, etc. And it was pretty disheartening to see. You could make an argument that maybe I would rather be punched in the face once than have my reputation in tatters after like a year's worth of repeated kind of savagery and talking behind my back, etc. I think that would be far worse, psychologically speaking, you know, quite damaging, rather than just a one-off like punch in the face from someone who really didn't like me at the time and then everything was fine afterwards. So we shouldn't kind of look over that. There's probably huge ramifications for that kind of psychological warfare that kind of goes outside of the statistics, that people are, you know, really suffering in that respect, and no one really talks about that at all. They just talk about guys beating each other up. Well, I hope that's been some food for thought. It certainly was interesting for me to sit and witness all this. If you've got any stories about this, please leave them below. If you're some sort of red pill guy that's going to leave a load of incel related nonsense down there, I'm probably just going to delete it, because I really don't have the time for that kind of stuff. Like I said before, this isn't an anti-women channel. I'm just talking on some of the things that I specifically saw, but I also saw lots and lots of other things from lots and lots of other groups of people, which I detail in a lot of the other videos. And if you haven't watched them, please go and have a look. They're pretty amusing. I get lots of good comments on them, so please leave a nice comment. Subscribe to the channel if you can. I really appreciate it. We are slowly growing as a channel, but every single subscriber means something, and every comment that's a sensible comment I really appreciate. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. I'll catch you next time.